We are ready to begin. Give it another minute. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to greet and welcome you all to the 9th Annual Don Mkhwanazi Memorial Lecture. By way of introduction, my name is Thulisile Buthelezi, and it is a privilege and an honor to be your program director this evening. Today we celebrate a life well lived, honoring a pioneer of Black economic empowerment, a Durban legend, a South African icon, Undonga, Don Mkhwanazi. As we reflect on his legacy, let us remember his unrelenting and unyielding pursuit for meritocracy and Black excellence. He often spoke about Black excellence, embodying dignity and commanding respect in every facet of his life and work. We are privileged to have among us the Mkhwanazi family, whose unwavering support and commitment continue to inspire us all, to the leadership of the Black Management Forum, Mr. Vusi Sithole, and distinguished guests, all attendees. Your presence here tonight is a testament to the enduring legacy of Ubab Ndonga, Don Mkhwanazi. As we gather here tonight, we are reminded of Bab Don Mkhwanazi's immense contributions to the transformation and empowerment of our nation's economic landscape. His visionary leadership and tireless efforts laid the foundation for many of the advancements we see today in Black economic empowerment. Tonight's program is designed not only to commemorate his achievements, but also to inspire us to continue his work. This evening's keynote address promises us to be one of insight and experiences reflecting on Bab Don Mkhwanazi's impact and the way forward for Black empowerment in South Africa. And with that said, allow me to say, Ndonga, Shamase, Kwali Nkosi. It is truly an honor to be standing before you tonight. To officially start the proceedings for this evening, I'd like to invite Ms. Tembakazi, who is the BMF KwaZulu-Natal's Provincial Treasurer, to give us the welcoming remarks. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Mkhwanazi to the podium.
Thank you to our program director. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tembakazi, and I'm a member of the KZN PEC of the BMF. My job this evening is to welcome everyone to this 9th Annual Don Mkhwanazi Lecture. I would like to extend a warm welcome to our special guest this evening, the Mkhwanazi family, Oshamase, Ondonga. I would also like to welcome our sponsors, BMF leadership, our members, and to all our distinguished guests. It is a great honor and privilege for us to be a host province for the Memorial Lecture Kababundong, who is also affectionately known as the father of Black economic empowerment. As the province, we will always be thankful to Ndonga for putting KZN in the SA business spotlight through his impeccable leadership. This is a reminder that excelling in whatever you do will give you a recognition wherever you are in the world. This year's lecture comes at a time where we as the province have just celebrated the inscription of 2 new heritage sites, being the Sibudu Caves and Ohlange, and we look forward to the positive spin-offs, to the positive economic spin-offs from these developments. With those words, I would like to extend a warm welcome to everyone and hope you enjoy the lecture. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mkhwanazi, for that warm welcome. Next, I have the pleasure of introducing the BMF Acting President, Ms. Lili Moabe, who will share a few words with us. Please welcome Ms. Moabe to the podium.
evening, good evening. Good evening. Oh, Durban people. I thought this is a lovely province, everybody's friendly. Where are the smiles? Sorry, I just want to organize this. Let me start first by taking the honor and the privilege to acknowledge the protocol. I think firstly it's important for me to request the Mkhwanazi family to please stand because we are here to honor them, to celebrate them. Each and every single family member, please stand wherever you are so that we may be able to see you as you are our most important guests today. Thank you very much. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you very much. Let's welcome everybody who's here to the 9th annual Don Mkhwanazi lecture. We are here to celebrate not only the success, but also to do a reflection of what our Don Mkhwanazi was all about. As the BMF, the past 12 months has been characterized by unprecedented challenges, but through it all, we always maintained our commitment to Black excellence, our commitment to developing managerial leadership, irrespective of how Black people are seen in society today. A lot of people still ask, is the BMF still relevant? Especially in this new dispensation of what we call the government of national unity. And to give you a brief answer, I am going to say definitely yes. We have seen, since the elections that we went through earlier on this year, that as a country we are still struggling with inequality, poverty, but most importantly, systematic barriers that are preventing our Black people from advancing in society. We have seen that throughout each and every single endeavor that we go through as the Black people, we are still experiencing a lot of racism. And we have this challenge at this moment of, are you getting the title, are you getting the role, whether you are good enough or not, or is it because you are Black? We have seen a lot of organizations go out there and say this BEE is no longer relevant. If whether in this new country that we are trying to build, is it still necessary for us to have BEE policies? And as the BMF, we are saying that we are prepared to fight this battle with resilience and innovation to make sure that we advance the Black economic empowerment in this country, and we make sure that our people are represented in all spheres of our economy. Through our advocacy efforts, our capacity building initiatives, our strategic partnerships, we are working tirelessly to address the structural impediments that hinder the realization of Black excellence. We are committed to promoting diversity, equality, inclusion in all spheres of society. Ladies and gentlemen, the work of the BMF is far from being over. Despite the milestones that we have achieved as a country, the transformation journey still continues. In closing, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the BMF members. If you are a member in this room, if you can just please raise your hand so I can see you. Oh, very few hands. The rest of us are going to join immediately after this event today because you'll definitely understand what the BMF stands for. And you understand that we are the leading organization that can change the transformation journey of this country. We are committed to making sure that Black excellence is still pursued by our members throughout the country. our values, Ubuntu, integrity, creativity, and respect, is still one of the most important structures for us as an organization. I'm going to close off by a quote by Don Mkhwanazi. Open quote: "Each one of us has a critical role to play in advancing the course of economic revolution. Each one of us has a crucial role in creating a better future for all. The future of South Africa belongs to those who shape it. The future belongs to those who define it. And ladies and gentlemen, our future is in our hands." Close quote, Don Mkhwanazi. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you, Ms. Moabi, for your very insightful message. At this point, I'd like to invite our sponsor for the evening, which is Radisson Blue Hotel. This is the CEO of Oceans Mnyaka Development, Mr. Brian Mbono. Please help me in welcoming Mr. Mbono to the podium.
Sanbonan, program director, hlangane naye lapha eliftini yabo. Yangena 18 usisi. Sisi nje umhlophekazi. Ukhanya ngebala. Uyabuza ukuthi going to BMF. I should call my name hamba naye bona. Ngithi athi yena yeah usho bathi yes. Then I interject I'm your host. Hayi into waziyawawo is it back it no I'm your host. Ngidawusuka nini. Ngidawusho yes I'm your host. No I'm your host. Hayi qinisa impela it give me okay, as you will. Then I get off at the second floor, go bamba umhlangana besignature. So ke ngathi hayi kulungile nkosazana iyodibana. Hello program director. Welcome to my house. Tongue in cheek, of course. Bakwethu kuthiwe ngusponsor walevi event eka baba Nqalabutho abeka belunga ngithi abeka ba online bengifuna ukugadla manje. Ay kufanele ngithenga idatha e-English ke manje. Nqalabutho le babushamase mabemusho, you know, the writers they say edoyen magama amakhulu esingisi. With inimitable style. I can attest, Mdenoa Mkhwanazi, in my early days of Upila. So I am a study or what do they say? I'm a protege of Omunyu Baba. Another doyen in his own right. You know the company called Marriott? They, many years ago, they were called Russell Boyd Marriott. Then they changed to Boyd and Marriott, then eventually became the Marriott Group. In the Marriott Group, you've got the big business of KZN. You've got Greenrod as shareholders there. You've got Merchant Bank, the real big boys. Not tender, but the boys who run, move, shift, shape, and change Durban. I'm talking about back then. And the impact is still realized today. So the son-in-law of the great-grandfather Marriott, Mick Hyatt, he's now late. It so happened that a position gamawami afforded me an opportunity to the elite education, business education and study, and general life of who was referred to as the King of Durban, yabo? And that's when I met the late Mkhwanazi. Hey, when we say Ubabu Don, he fought for black business. The South African shipyards contract, Transnet, where things happen, in my view, but yet we still fight over crumbs, Dolopin in the province, but there, and on this 9th occasion, may spirit sakhe, or rather his tenacity. Lama lecture angabi small talk. Stolo sam, phela nikwami ngithi. Yeah. Nustolo sam. And I'll tell you why I'm saying that at the end of my short 5.5 minutes. Awangabi small talk. BMF angabi just a group of black managers and a forum of it. Let the context that we make in these lectures, may they turn into contracts. I'm an example of what BEE has done or tries to do even now. But there'll come a time whereby being black will just be like a man's or a Vulimpompin. What then? I'm just dropping these provoking thoughts in this platform. It's the 9th annual Don Mkhwanazi lecture. Lawa 8 adlulile. What came of them? Because if sizokhumbula umuntu onjengalo, senzani ukumazi? I mean, I can tell you of one particular person. Out of respect, I won't mention his name, but where khona ngamhlazane inkosi uJesu imbiza ushamase kwikhaya lokugcina. And since then, ngimbonile lo muntu exercise ubudon Mkhwanazi in a white, Boer dominated environment. Project manager, Kwama projects, billions rands worth of projects. So he's making use of being in the company of Lubab. Where now? So I'm challenging BMF, nama annual lectures lawa azoqhubeka eza. I told uMongameli outside, Getimna Wabonga, thank you for hosting us. And I'm no problem. Let's do it bigger and better next year. ngifuna ukuvula lenye room lengapha to accommodate. Pardon me for saying this, but ama policies that benefit abelungu, we will correct them a benefit umuntu omnyama uma silwa ngepeni. Indaba ilele kuyipeni bazalwane. Singamemeza sigxoba itoyito sishaya ingqumphotho uhlelo kwama gymnastics lawa lapha eParis njengamanje. But until we are able to change the black and white to suit thina umuntu omnyama, then ke ngingasho ukuthi I know shamas ukuwa kwalomuntu omkhulu was not in vain, because right now ngokwami mndeni wakamkhwanazi sisabhimba. So ngiyanchallenge njengoba ngicela kwami ngithi next year let's do bigger and better. Let us, for the next 12 months, BMF, take maybe, next year will be the 10th, 10 individuals, find them, abanomlando ngalo baba, and who are activating the economy. Egamena lo baba. I tell the story of my upbringing because when umezo maganje at sakuwa abese liqupha lakhe alithi akubheke kanje athi indeed abonge yamasa wengakwenzi kuma platform la ngangimbona lapha ekhaya Winston Park. Kanti faith and favor and grace will have it that God blesses me by running the most iconic development on the east coast of Africa. So ke angicwele la kwamala. I'm charging you, BMF. Uguti. Number one, I'm an example of what BMF is about. Number two, I am changing, shifting, and shaping the course of business. Mina, at 41. So again, next year, umanbuya need in Funguzala. I want to see the guest list. I want to be involved. I want to be sleeves up, hands dirty, so that kungabi nje ayi lecture eyani siphamisa igama lakhe kodwa wenzeni ngokumazi wenzani ngezinto asifundisa zona. Are you challenging there in the corporate offices? Noma uyidilesi nje eshawa umoya we-aircon uphendula esihlalweni seleda se-choreographed furniture. Wenzani? Oh, trust me, I'm speaking in his spirit. When Mkhwanazi ngizi kuthiwa if but because therefore August abesathi ke sibanibani hello baba wayikhomba belungu kanje la baba kanje abakhombe. I'm not surprised that he had in his circle abantu abafana no Vivian who through a lot of objections and challenges was told would these oceans become a white elephant, and then those who sit on the opposite side of the table come and buy it for next to nothing. Oh, no. Challenges upon challenges. Deep in the fire. Michael Jamin will tell you. Back then I was early 30s. No, Brian will handle it. Who's Brian? You are sitting in a hotel that this young gentleman, full of grace by the honor of God, raised just under R1 billion to get it built. So ke ngithi kuwe, where you are you giving the world the true version of you? Are you, as you are here today, the Don Mkhwanazi Annual Memorial Lecture, what further have you taken from his head? What have you drawn on the canvas of your business career? With the feather you took from his head. Umbuzo ongafuni ungiphendule manje, but if sizohlangana kanje every year for the past 9 years, muphi umehluko owenzile wena? Hayi mina ngisebenzela umlungu. Have you heard of intrapreneurship? Ngeke phela sakha amathuba sonke. Khona fanele sibe ama-catalyst awo amathuba. Ubalancing. So I'm challenging you, BMF, and people in this room. Ngithi, next year, don't get me involved in into hayi lutho. Wangifaka. Hawu. Zobona amabele nyoka ngikutshela. I have proof. Ngoba khona wangithemba, wangipusha. I'm sure bayapusha na kodwa uvuma. They are resisting. Yeke ukuresista. Throw favor and faith into the wind and see what God will do. South African shipyards back in those days. I khona. Ngale brown envelope, but with just tenacity and willpower ethi. If not me, then who? In a single generation, Sengihlala Phansi, program director, there's one person who shifts the needle. In which generation are you at? When's with what God has given you. We all know what he did. And we celebrate him for the past 9 years. As celebrate her 10. When? So BMF, 10 people, put them together and let them tell of umsebenzi walo baba. Bona self bashifte bashintsha from ukwazana lo baba. Acting President, uyalile ninomondo ngokungifaka la ku program. I'm not being serious. Next year, provided you give me a guest list that is bigger than this, ngizonika le venue futhi. I know mina ngayishaya. So ngihlala phansi ke, that's the challenge. Between now and when we come back again, each of you must have a story to tell. Whether you've employed, whether you've empowered, whether you've helped. But lesihlalo kuso akusona esakho wedwa esokbenefita. Bantu besimame bakithi, zindlovukazi namakhosazana kithi. Sizwe sikaphunga nomageba. Nzala abantu yizizwe zonke. Ngiyanicela, ngiyanxusa, le ability enikezwe uNkulunkulu ukuthinta into ni multiply. Yekani uPhD upull him down syndrome. Sikhona nje kungenxa yeni bantu besimama. Into eniyithintayo iya multiply. Let it ayishaye. let it apply in business. Ukuze iy'ngane zey'ngane zakho zingalambi. For a wise man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. Proverbs. Akudingi ushade uzube uProverbs 31 woman, man. No. Ngoba kuthiwa he who finds a wife, not a girl or a ntombazana, a wife. Should wife vele uphiwe. Kufake ebhizinisini. Ngiyacela. Next year, my hand is up for the venue on condition. Siyagcwalisa. Yes? 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 Ungahabi small talk. Size nezinto sibone ukuthi because uma celebrate umuntu sisuke sithi umoya wakhe la ukhona awuthokoze. Kungabi ukuhlangana kuthiwa awu hey le ndoda futhi holding tool. But I ended there. Come with the guest list. Let's make it bigger. Let's make it better. In the spirit of the changing political dynamics that have transpired in 2024. Asume ngempela ke manje na ke. UBMF ngabe inhlangano yo yabo. Yeah. Bekuthiwe ngikhulume ngokusponsor. Ngiyacela ukuthi ngihlele phansi. Otherwise izogcina ingixosha. But welcome to my house. You are welcomed. Come again next year, but you must bring a friend. A friend who's made value, who's shifted, who's changed, who's doing something. You know, in the spirit of Shamas. No more small talk. Let's show works. And if you need help, abakuvulelwa umnyango, call me. Thank you.
You got me, Mr. Mpono. That's what you meant as in host. My bad. Thank you so much. That was very profound and very insightful. Siyabonga. And for one person who is in the young professionals leadership front, I do want to accept that challenge. I'm always up for a good challenge. So we'll see you next year. And now it is my honor to announce that we have a special video tribute in memory of Ubabundonga. If we could all turn our attention to the screen for this heartfelt presentation.
There are a number of watershed moments, but I think for me the most important one was that the liberation movements and the political organization accorded the BMF the respect, recognize that the BMF was a legitimate player, a genuine player with bona fides. The ANC, the government in waiting, could not move on major policy fronts without consulting with the BMF. The recognition and the respect accorded to the BMF, for me, that was the highlight. BMF during our tenure became a national organization, not a Johannesburg organization, not a Durban organization, not a P organization. And of course, we started student chapters and redefined who could be a member of the Black Management Forum. We said anyone who was a manager can become a member of the BMF. Any shared moments. But I think for me the most important one was that the liberation movements and the political organization accorded the BMF the respect, recognized that the BMF was a legitimate player, a genuine player with bona fides. The ANC, the government in waiting, could not move on major policy fronts without consulting with the BMF. The recognition and the respect accorded to the BMF, for me, that was the highlight. BMF, during our tenure, became a national organization, not a Johannesburg organization, not a Durban organization, not a P organization. And of course, we started student chapters and redefined who could be a member of the Black Management Forum. We said anyone who was a manager can become a member of the BMF. Anyone with the potential to become a manager could become a member. That's where the student chapters came along. Also, those who aspire. So we're not a closed book, we're an open book and cast the net wider. That's when people like Jimmy Manyi came through into the BMF fold, who, as we all know, became president. So we're proud that we identify young talent that could play a role into the future. The BMF possesses intellectual capital that is so needed in this country. The BMF needs to partner with the state or with the government in a constructive, critical manner. Political emancipation plus economic freedom equals total liberation. The BMF should not be orthodox. It should in fact become a little bit outrageous and unorthodox to define things in a new direction. It must challenge the status quo. Everything you do must be based on your ideology, in the best interest of this country, and it must lead us to the critical mass of managers. But a manager that is a member of the BMF must be a new breed of a manager.
Development and economic development departments for the Hibiscus Coast municipality, now the Nkonyeni municipality. She was also the founding CEO of the Hibiscus Coast Development Agency and the acting CEO of the Durban Chamber of Commerce. Her extensive business experience spans industries such as waste management, IT, business planning, and international trade consulting. She has been Ms. Mnyaka's corporate governance experience includes board positions at ComputerShare, BMF Investments, Workers' Life Insurance, and Pan-African Asset Management. She has served as Vice President of the Durban Chamber of Commerce, Deputy President and Acting President of the Black Management Forum, and the National Chairman of the Progressive Professionals Forum. She was also the first Vice President for the Black Business Council and a member of the BRICS Finance Services Working Committee. Notably, she's been a board member of Transnet, chaired the Transnet Risk Committee, and was the chairman of the board of Sunrail, where she contributed to the development of South Africa's national roads. She also served on the Minister of Transport's Chairs and CEOs Forum. And with that said, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Ms. Mnyaka to the stage.
I will now say, ladies and gentlemen, because in the BMF family, be careful of digital footprint. Because I even hear stories that I didn't think were known. I'd like to welcome and acknowledge, and actually thank them first, the Mkhwanazi family and the BMF family for inviting me to this 9th lecture series of Remembering a Legacy Kandonga. Yeah, and in that, I therefore acknowledge Mkhwanazi uNdlunkulu in her absence, with the presence of abantwana bakhe, uSizwe, uNkule ukhona, uThobile. Sizwe uNkule noThobile. I also acknowledge the presence of Indlencane, uMamzodwa Msimang Kansibande, and ingane zabo, their children, Ulwazi noNana. I'm thanking really the BMF and the Mkhwanazi family for keeping Dr. Don Mkhwanazi's legacy alive through this series of lectures. This is the 9th lecture, as we have heard. So while preparing for this lecture, I realized that not only could his legacy be encapsulated in one lecture, but to have a series of lectures gives us an opportunity to pass the baton of economic emancipation to living generations. Passing the baton, therefore, requires that we look back at the fundamental vision and not detract from it until it is achieved. In having this history and the passing of the baton, I would like to acknowledge a very special person and friend to the BMF, the one who started this from initial to 5 years, Chairman in his life, Uvusis Tol. Job. I am now also grateful to Mr. Brian Bono, challenging us with what are you doing about it, which is also the basis of the lecture. Attempt to lay the original vision while looking at whether we have achieved that vision. And if not, how far are we from achieving it? I will, however, be mostly looking through the lens and reflecting through his reign. While I could have in these economic turbulent times, he was a power and ensured that full stop, bottom line, as he would say. When I sought the views of his close associates and business sojourners and activists, they unanimously painted a picture of black industrialists unashamedly. Undonga was a big picture person. And this is shown in the sectors that he broke through. It was not just normal sectors. It was like, groundbreaking ones. For instance, one thing that he's popularly known for is agitating for ocean economy participation, especially of the Durban people. He didn't just talk about it, he did it. He owned South African shipyards. So as we say, the BMF then never just spoke. It didn't actually show or lead the way by action, not by word only. In the cutthroat world of business and corporate characters, to the extent of selling out their own, his friends remember him as a very different person, the one who protected and nurtured selflessly. And those that were in the business space, economic space, know that very well, that they could rely on Undonga. He was loyal to a fault. They remember him for his love of family and friends, always bringing together his friends to his giving them permission to dream big. They remember mentorship and tenacity in pushing a particular position, whatever the obstacles are. Maybe I should mention that he was an empowering person, as Mzwanele Manyi said, who never felt threatened by young leaders, but instead giving them support to rise. He understood that the economy must be shared and that he sacrificed his life as most active black businesses do. So that was how Undonga is remembered by his friends. The vision of the BMF had always been about economic emancipation, and during Bradon's life, he principally lived it with sacrifice. Sacrifice, I still say that again. It had always been Bradon's view that political freedom without economic emancipation is not liberation. And he struggled and sought for total economic emancipation. In laying a picture of where we are, the biggest questions are, what are we going to do, or what are we doing about it now? Can the majority population, particularly professionals or the intellectual, those who have intellectual IP, or who have IP and business, profess to espouse the spirit of Bradon? Maybe I should lay history because, as I said, it's passing the baton because some of you are still very, very young. The June 1976 Soweto uprising were a catalyst to the visibility and in other cases, formation of structures fighting for political freedom because we knew that those just go together. The youth successfully led the revolution, which is a reminder that youth always have an important and significant role in societal structural changes. It is therefore important to locate where today's youth is and their role in ensuring that the fundamental and original vision of the BMF is achieved, and alert them if they're not aware of the strategy and tactics of the BMF through its successive presidents. During Ndonga's very successful and visible reign, he used the issue of intersection of politics and economy, as you've also heard him talk here, to ensure that vision is achieved. How did he do it? He became an economic advisor to both President Mandela and Mbeki and influenced the participation of black people, particularly African. Disclaimer is that I really don't accept the issue of black, because when you look at me, I really am not black. I think I'm brownish. So I always say, abantu abansundu. Abantu abansundu. So unashamedly, that is Africans. Because we said Africans in particular. The intersection of political economy influenced legislation that championed specific focus on empowerment and significant players in the transformation, as he has also reflected in the video there that we saw. The implementers are in the economic space, which means in today's corporates and African-owned business, we quickly learned in the BMF that he who plays the piper calls the tune. So what is the tune being played? And who is paying the piper? It's reflected very clearly in the economic spaces or the economic climate, this turbulent economic climate. So Radisson always felt that the ownership and control of the economy is the lever through which we can achieve that. Ethical managerial leadership, especially in corporate South Africa, it regarded itself managers of untransformed economy. Would be visible if BMF had achieved its goal. I can assure you that we would not be in the economic crisis that spectrum of professionally economically centered issues that the BMF engages with. Like in any organization, the president of the BMF leaves his or her own stamp on issues to champion within the spectrum or look at the issues that emerge, topical issues. The BMF, during Radisson's presidency, had focused on entrepreneurship. As I have previously mentioned, it was issues of ownership and control. This vision had an intersection with NAFCOC, which Radisson came from. NAFCOC was an organization of owners who had broad vision. As they were not allowed to participate in the economic space, they had their own small businesses. But that's not where Radisson channeled his vision. And also, they also said to him, go ahead, BMF. Because when we own these big businesses, we need ethical managers. And he was trusted as one of those. But he was also able to galvanize people to his vision, because the issue is about impact. What is your impact? It's not about talking. And you cannot have an impact standing outside. You need to be in the boxing ring, so that you can say, oh, this is what happened. In that strategy, BMF vision was being carried forward as a baton, focusing during successive presidencies on topical issues. What is the prevailing turbulence, and what will it take to achieve the vision of the BMF? The underestimation of the political economy or intersection of politics and economy has put us in the current position that we're in. When an African business delegation, and Radisson also mentioned it, went to Lusaka to engage the ANC, one of the political leaders, who shall remain nameless, said in addressing this intersection, no, but where are you? You can't ride two horses at once, business or politics, because they were going through meeting delegations and delegations. So they coming here, they are activists, but they are in business. So he said, you can't ride two horses at once. And one of the business leaders said, in fact, you can. You just put a yoke on both and expand them. Today, we are learning how disastrous detachment of the majority population is from the economy as a result of that carelessness. So, the current economic climate that Radisson would be seized with and acting on is South Africa's current economic performance is dismal. Broadly, total black ownership in both listed and unlisted companies is 5.8%. However, we're not just lamenting today, but rallying black business and managers to reunite in driving the vision of economic emancipation with the benefit of hindsight and active participation by professionals and participants from the majority, which is African, of course. The challenge lies squarely within us. What our own people, our majority, doing to address these issues? To acknowledge his contribution to the actual stats. If you can bring my phone. The challenge, he calls it voodoo politics or voodoo accounting, in fact, where the measurement due to the fate BE codes of good practice. And it's sad to notice that we are still making fatal compromises. I say it lies squarely within us is that what our own managers sacrificing each other at the altar of personal gains against each other. Radisson would have never been found in that space. Disunity is costing us. Abdicating our leadership responsibilities is bringing us closer to the because it started with Touré in Niger, a young, activist. He came in, they said, you owe us. We built an airport, we built a what and that. He said, oh, fine, you can take your airport. You can take your airport with you. He looked at who else can provide without this being tied to the piper so obviously. So, to continue with the economic climate, unemployment is rife. Unbelievably, with 58.1% of the country being youth, stats show that 62% of the youth live in extreme poverty. And that 58%, it's age 15 to 24, and then 35% is age 25 to 34. So what do you do when you are young and unemployed? But looking, and this is across all education levels. So it's not unemployment because they are not educated. It's across all levels. So the social instability and rife crime amidst the wealth of previous oppressors who have now become our stomach friends. We witness the financial sector participation being cruelly displaced in African-owned and led insurance. It happened through legislation. Where was our input? I can proudly say, at the time I was leading the BBC, the importance of being an active participant. Nestlife was one of the, in fact, there are 3 companies in the insurance industry. 2 were backed by powerful the Workers' Life was backed by Prop Group, then there was now 360 Life backed by Unehau. But this Nestlife, it grew from the roots. What should Dr. Mkhwanazi used to say? That grow your own business. It was so shameful to witness that the lack of participation led to the passing of, at the time, what in fact is still what we call two peaks. Legislation that was rejected in Australia and all. The input, because when we are in the leadership space, you're not expected to be as knowledgeable about each factor or each sector as the people that are there in some issues. So what do? We use the intellectual capacities of the people that are in that space, because that you can have much more input. When we went to Parliament to protest against it, our input came from Nestlife. Sadly, as the BBC, Black Business Council, we went to all those companies. Guys, we were calling, we had an insurance sector or committee, or financial sector committee, but they were all either the banking and whatever, and the insurance. Only one input we got. So what is it saying about people who are in that space? As Brian has said, they are comfortably, sitting there, not wanting to rock the boat. But change cannot happen without rocking the boat. Otherwise, you are in one place. So the boat needs to be rocked. Today, we see that there are no black insurance companies. Not that they were not there, but the Reserve Bank was actively used to displace all of them. Shamefully pushing them through, legal fees and protracted legal processes so that they use even the money that they had. Today we don't have. And it's not about the issues of excellence. So if we are not able to challenge the Reserve Bank, and not just challenge with hot air, but, participation, writing, supporting each. To gain control in any space, though, there must be unity, which requires a sacrifice of personal needs for the good of the majority. When you look at who are in the spaces, or in the financial spaces, or in the economy today, there's unity. There's the Jews. They are united. They are few, but what defines them is unity. There's the Muslims that are united and pushing, and therefore they are able to make gains in the economic space. And I actually realized that what is uniting them is faith. What is uniting us? Where is our faith centered? Because we displaced Ubuntu. So there is obviously a guerrilla warfare. The guerrilla warfare is operations that are carried out by small independent forces in the rear with the objective of disrupting or delaying the advance in this political economic space. However, the advances cannot be achieved without the main field or the main soldiers. So, economic guerrillaszip, to paraphrase the corporate guerrilla that was Radisson, was very clear how this would be achieved. He who pays the piper calls the tune. We have seen today that the major army of advance, which is politics, has not been working with business or with the African majority as it used to. During BMF times, previous times, it is true that we were highly regarded because we were ethical, the BMF was ethical, through its successive presidents. You know, in fact, it reminds me of two incidents that are evidenced by the commitment to economic liberation at the expense of self. As I said, Radisson was a straight talker, sharpshooter, speaking truth to power. So when he finishes, he'll say, full stop, bottom line. So you know whether you agree or not, that's fundamental to him. Now today we see more concerns with speaking truth to our own stomachs at the expense of generational economic impoverishment. We are where we are because we refuse to act. So we will never advance. The tactics of the enemy, I would say in a war, or the ones that were our oppressors, are successful because we do not want to sacrifice. It must be me, me, and me. It doesn't happen like that. So to relate the event of ethical leadership within the BMF generationally, our other former president, Lord Ndlovu, had a very high position, and at that time it was very, you didn't go as far as that position as an this economic emancipation. So he gets called to a board meeting after the weekend. No, Lord, you must stop this agitation. He said, no, I can't. And then left them. Later, he just elected to leave a remunerated position at Nedbank and became a president rather than sacrifice the fair check with the fair check that he was getting from the bank. So it was, I would rather stay poor than sacrifice my own. Where is that spirit today? So, the same economic climate, we see debt has gone just beyond the roof. In Nedbank stats, recent stats, they say that the borrowings to service the debt is 18%. So basically, if you borrow 100 rands, you can only, 18% of that would go to servicing the debt. If you can see how the financial sector works, today. There's active, not participation, but displacement of any African from the banking industry. Instead, it's our own that are being used, because they will never come with their skin, with their pink skin, and hit you. For me, there's no white, there's no black, there's pink, or any other color. So, now, you see that they will never come to us and actually have an out-and-out war. But they are using the lack of principle. So in closing, I would like to reiterate that when I reflect on Undonga and where he would be there, boots and all, with a gun, knowing very well that it's such sacrifice. Because the one thing Ndonga was known about, as one of his friends even said, Ndonga was so proud about he has made, rather than what millions he has made for his family. So, in this struggle, I can say we can reunite and reset our moral fiber by starting with ourselves, by talking to our politicians. The lack of unity, in fact, was even shown recently in the stealing of the country. Because you expect that when you vote, and I will use rough figures, not the actual figures. I get 70%. Then I should be leading because the people have spoken. Where is the people have spoken today? There's voodoo accounting. How is that possible? Because they will go to Tembakazi and say, here's 3 million for your home. You are so hungry that time. You are forgetting that 62% of youth are living in extreme poverty. The majority of the African population is living in poverty. It can never be both ways. It can never be both ways. So it is very important that we use our intellectual capacity and abilities to plead and inspire our political leaders. Input into when you come with this, what does it mean practically and physically? So we can't just be standing on the sidelines, because the reality is that politicians are supposed to be taking most of the inputs. I mean, they're not supposed to be authorities. They are political leaders that are supposed to play with their people. So when political leadership fails, it means that it started with those that needed to have input. So we cannot be blaming them. We must blame ourselves first, that what are we doing to input, because that is how politics works. Because what prevails at the time is what others have inputted. When we look at the input of those now who united and became leaders or co-leaders, you can see that they are using their structures. So I'd urge you, as what Brian said, let's reset the clock. It starts with commitment. It starts with sacrifice, personal sacrifice. How many black businesses have been sacrificed that today are not just limping? They are dead. because of lack of principle. So I urge the BMF to use the intellectual capacity that is there. In fact, even some of it are so well versed in the issues and are no longer economically active participants through displacement. So those experiences are essential to forge a way forward of how to do this. BMF here's the input. Black Business Council here's the input. So BMF, let's start again. It is possible.
Thank you, Ms. Mnyaka. A very powerful and inspiring address, indeed. Next, I would like to call up Usis Mkhwanazi, who is the daughter of Bab Don Mkhwanazi, to speak on behalf of the family. Please join me in welcoming Usis Tops Africa to the podium.
This is incredibly weighty for me. Yet, I cannot even begin to tell you the honor it is to be standing in front of you in this moment in time. While it feels incredibly exhilarating, I also feel incredibly emotional. Emotional to be doing something like this for the very first time. Not for myself, but on behalf of umndeni wami. So when my brother, uBhuti Omdala, messaged me about a week ago to say, Tobile, I need to speak to you about Dad's lecture, I said to myself, oh gosh. I felt like I knew the conversation Sizwe wanted to have with me. And I felt like I knew the conversation that he wanted to have with me because I remember a year ago at Don Mkhwanazi's 8th memorial lecture, he said he's going to be stepping down on this particular duty. It was now a responsibility he was ready to pass on. Immediately, of course, back then, I was cool, I was calm, I was unbothered. Naturally thinking uNkululeko would be the next one in line for some. The reality is that sometimes our work obligations, our work pressures, and must take first preference. So in his absence, uNkululeko Mkhwanazi, I was then tasked by uBhuti on this role this evening, one which do not take faintly. First and foremost, it must be said, I don't know where Sizwe is sitting, but it must be said, perhaps you can put your hand up, Shama, so I can see you. Thank you. It has been quite special, significant, and quite remarkable to watch you on this journey. I really would like to take this moment to acknowledge you and to thank you, Sigbonge Butomdala, for the sterling job that you have pursued, emulated, and executed over the years, leading us as umndeni and honoring the role of speaking on behalf of the family here at the Don Mkhwanazi BMF lecture. Shamas Nkwalenkosi siyabonga. Not only do we see you, but we honor you and we celebrate you. Cela simshayele izandla. Sanbonan, a great evening to you. Madam, leadership of the BMF in its totality, to the celebrated Radisson Blue, being represented by Mr. Brian Mpono this evening, to our distinguished guest speaker, Mam Tembakazi, to our friends that are our family, and to our friends that are our family, and of course to family that are our friends, and to Ondonga Oshamasi. So I imagine many years ago, someone speaking life and telling a 13-year young Bongane Don Mkhwanazi, eChesterville, growing up noma wakhe uMamngadi nobhuti wakhe ubaba omncane uThina. I imagine these words being spoken to him. And of course, naturally, in the words of Oprah, "Oh, you have no idea what your legacy will be. You have no idea what your light will be. You have no idea what your power will be. You have no idea what your name will mean and where it will be called. Oh, Bongane, 13 years young, your legacy will not be one thing. Your legacy will be every life you touch. Your legacy will be every life that you influence. Your legacy will be every life that you bless, that you guide. I cannot quite fathom the lives that Undonga, that Ubabwethu has touched, has influenced, has blessed, and has guided. Perhaps I can comprehend but a few stories, but many I cannot. To the BMF leadership, I would really like to take this moment to thank you and to honor you for saying yes. For saying yes still, 9 years later. Your commitment, your dedication, your support has been a treasure to us as umndeni. It speaks to Undonga's everlasting legacy. So siyabonga, Thandeka. To Lily Nomonde, and really to the BMF leadership, both in KZN and nationally, over the years and to date. To the Radisson Blue, noting that we are being represented this evening by Brian Bono, siyabonga kakhulu for your words and the challenge that you have left at the hands of the BMF. But when I think of Radisson Blue, whom Ubaba was incredibly fond of, together they had a very special business acumen. Together they had a very special business friendship. Consistently celebrated the tenacity, the perseverance, and also the resolve of Mr. Vivian Reddy. He always, with no exception, spoke highly of him as a prolific businessman who was distinct and unwavering and had a lot of respect for human beings. I will never forget what my dad once said to me on a family holiday in the Drakensberg. He had mentioned Ubab Vivian Reddy and one of the many values, lessons he had learnt from him. And the one being never to lose your value of who you are to others. Never lose your value of who you are to others. So thank you, Siyabonga, in his absence, to Mr. Vivian Reddy, to his team being led by Brian, for your continuous support, for your heart and your spirit in always honoring Undonga and speaking highly of our father. May yours, this place in particular, be blessed abundantly. Magwande. Indeed, Mr. Mbono, your challenge has been heard. And of course, moving to our keynote for tonight, Mam Tembakazi. If I recall correctly, I officially met you in 2016, shortly after Ubaba had passed away. Immediately, you were there, ekhaya. You came with a number of other BMF leaders. And I remember seeing you every day leading up to the funeral. I have since come to know that you have been vice president of the BMF under Ujimi Mine, and also a Transnet board member alongside Ubaba. Those board members that were released. Because let us not talk about principles. Let us not talk about ethical leadership. But really, thank you for this evening. Thank you for bringing your own touch and for bringing your own flair in honoring, reflecting Ubaba and everything that he embodied. Yours was genuine, yours was high-powered, and yours was distinguished. Siyabonga kakhulu. So I really would like to take some time to zoom in and talk a little bit about legacy, because we are here to honor Undonga's legacy. And when I reflect on legacy, one of the most eloquent time that embodies what legacy is this one, and I quote, "Legacy is not what you do for yourself, but it is what you do for others," unquote. It is without a doubt that the legacy of Undonga was essentially about empowerment. The liberation and empowerment of black people, everybody else. Undonga, in his quest for empowerment, liberation, authentic and genuine conversion, or be it ethical leadership, or just mentorship. He was essentially, when you think of his legacy in very layman's term, he was about being a light for others. He was about being a light for somebody else. Why? So that other person, too, may find their way. So that other person, too, may be a light. That essentially was the heart and the spirit of Undonga. Not for himself, but for abanye abantu. Everyday moments with Ubaba and just his everyday legacy, because I think it's important to highlight that. He always would say that you should not try to be what you're not. You cannot try to be what you're not. You have to be unapologetic about who you are, and then work on refining and bettering that person. I was chatting to Natim Kiza just the other day about Ubaba, a man that I believe was very privileged and blessed to have spent years and years on the road with Ubaba and has incredible stories and anecdotes, moments with him. And he says, Tobile, you know, DDB, every time he was asked, how are you, Ndonga? How are you, Shamas? He'd always say, I'm trying harder as usual. And for me, that speaks to the sentiments and the notion of always trying to better yourself and not being content by who you are today or who you were izolo. I have never, ever learned the idea of kindness, the idea of generosity, the idea of abundance and empathy from anybody else but Uma Nobaba. He lived it every day. And as a family, with all of my siblings, we agree that you may not speak of Undonga without mentioning unapologetic, we've heard it a few times this evening, loyal, courageous, fearless, bold, imperfect, generous, dynamic, loving, brave, selfless, trailblazer, powerful, ethical leadership. And all these really speak to empowerment. I would like to leave you with this idea of forging forward. I honestly think we need to get over ourselves and get over our issues. Not that we need to ignore them, but to face them head on. I think only then will we continuously find solutions in how we best forge forward. Only then will we find the answers to the many issues that we face as a country. Leadership, education, the list goes on. We owe it to ourselves to get over ourselves for our country, for our continent as proud Africans, and for the world as global citizens. We cannot afford to show up without intention. We cannot afford to show up without meaning. We cannot afford to show up without purpose. And I have to highlight this, that everybody here is important. And I'm trying to make this point that Tembakazi speaks about, unity. It's not in some of us, it's not in some of you, but it is all of us. But titles really, essentially don't mean anything because they come and they go. That is not who you are. And so, as I sit down from this podium, it's really up to us to live up to the legacy that has been left for us. The legacy that we know, that we see, that we honor, that we celebrate through Mkhwanazi. And also acknowledging that there are many other legacies, perhaps in this room. I think of Uslomo Ntombela, Ubaba Ntombela as well, who have recently lost a mother and a wife, respectively. I know for you, Slomo, that this is a legacy you are fired up to live up to. And so we have no choice but to live up to the legacies that have been left for us. With 59.8 million people in South Africa, 1.2 billion in Africa, and about 7.9 billion in the world, no one else is like you. Knowing that if you have life, then you have purpose, regardless of your age and regardless of your gender. Yours is a compelling one. And that is why all of us are important and why all of us must forge forward to be each other's answers. One of the things I always say when I think of Ubaba, every day, I'm never without you, Ndonga. Wherever I go, you too, my dear, go. Wherever I am, you too, my dear, are. I carry your heart with me, for I am never, ever without it. And I imagine the same for all of us as a family, collectively. Wherever we go, he too goes. May we continue to honor, celebrate this incredible human being who was always for other people, who was unapologetic about celebrating abanye abantu, their achievements, their milestones, and all of their glory. Ngiyabonga kakhulu.
I would like, it's unusual for me to reascend a stage, especially a guest speaker. But I would really like to apologize that in acknowledging the Mkhwanazi family, I acknowledge sengizidlile ma, sengizidlile. Inhlawulo yes.
Thank you, Sis Tobile, for those touching words. Up next, I would like to call the Mkhwanazi family, along with the BMF representatives, for a special gift handover to our lovely keynote speaker, Ms. Tembakazi Mnyaka. And perhaps let's use this opportunity to get in a few photo ops. Mrs. Tobile and Ms. Tembakazi, please approach the podium. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, ladies and gentlemen, to bring our formal proceedings to a close, I would like to invite the BMF.
Sanbonan Ntambama. Acting president and the Mkhwanazi family in a very Mnyaka, the Radisson Hotel. And thank you for this opportunity. How do we begin to say thanks? Mine is very short and to the point. There are many definitions of saying thank you out there, but one I want to really highlight as we say thank you is that we are recognizing that there's something greater than ourselves. There's something that needs to be acknowledged when we say thank you. Sometimes it is of those two, both who was DDB Mkhwanazi. Were we able to see as we zoom into it is precisely the idea we are able to gather in this fashion tonight. Therefore, it is important to protect ideas more than people, because through ideas, people emerge, but through people, ideas die. So therefore, we are grateful to the family for borrowing us Undong as the BMF and allowing him to sacrifice throughout his life. And we're truly grateful. Sometimes we don't fully understand the level of sacrifice that these, especially by sacrificing family time, etc. Just a quick example in passing. We used to come to Durban quite a lot growing up as a family, but I didn't realize until later that my father and so I thought it's a holiday, but they were actually scheming at certain times. So we don't really truly understand the measure and the lengths that they went to protect the idea of the BMF. And so we must defend the BMF and people. The BMF, as we see, it life, the concept and very is a cathedral built in 1886. Architect ended for the completion of the time he was asked, he would say that, and so when we build, we're not building them to finish them, but passing them generations. And hence, if you research the Sagrada Familia today, you'll discover that it will only be finished in 2026. Can you imagine? 1886 to 2026. So we are not in a rush because we are building with purpose. Every brick that we lay must be purposeful. That is the idea of the BMF and not individuals. We also say thank you to our keynote speaker. There's something very specific which we must not lose sight of that she mentioned. She mentioned many things, but one thing in particular, the financial services sector, it is untransformed the way it was envisaged by the BMF. And it is an area that is critical because it remains the backbone of the economy. It touches every aspect of the economy. It touches every industry. If it is expect any other industry to be transformed. So we must not lose sight of that battle of transforming the financial services sector. It's not a crime to clap, so someone wanted to clap. Sakulula. I also want to say thank you to the BMF staff as well. And thank you for opening up the province. We thank you for your work, both at national office and also take for granted the role that you play of Magakulo. There are many things, Undonga. The keynote, if you research Dr. Blaine Zimande's PhD thesis, he actually speaks about corporate guerrillas because he gave it effect at that time. And one of the things that Dr. Blaine Zimande said about BMF leaders, he couldn't understand corporate at the time. He tried, as he says when he speaks about this, I tried, I just could not understand how they survived the environment. So I decided to be an academic, and hence he went as far as a PhD. And in his PhD thesis, he actually talks about thing which was made possible in Ndonga. Ndonga was also called Idi Amin because of the way he was talking, etc. They called him Idi Amin. They tried to diminish him, but as you would know, he had a presence that cannot be mistaken. In 1994, both Bradon and Bralot got special awards by recognizing the role that they played in driving the agenda of transformation and agitating for it. They made many people uncomfortable. In fact, every time, corporate every time. And today, when we speak, does corporate shake? And so, as I sit down, as we say thank you, the challenge is there. There's the 10th lecture. And in addition to the 10th lecture, one of the things that we've been challenging ourselves in the BMF, in the different provinces that we've been visiting, is that provinces should go back to having their provincial conferences. Now, as we are thinking about the role of BMF broadly, but in particular the KZN region, when you have a lecture, whether you have it a day before the conference or after the conference, join the two and have a provincial conference in KZN, maybe with a lecture, or start it with they have a provincial conference to deal with policy-related matters in of KZN. And so we're giving ourselves this challenge, the leadership nationally and the leadership. Part of what we need to host that policy at the Radisson. Ladies and gentlemen, siyabonga kakhulu, and may evening, and as we continue to reflect the BMF, may we remember the role that Ndonga played in driving. Sit down. Ushenge for the role. Thank you very much. You've done a superb job. I know your mother is here. That you gave birth to this daughter. We are using her a lot in the BMF, by the way, and we are pushing much. And may you all have a good evening. Your gift.
What is in there. Thank you so much, Katjeni, for your closing remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, this brings our formal evening. Thank you for being in attendance and honoring the legacy of Ndonga. We of networking and a light meal. Please do enjoy the rest of your evening. One last announcement. If anybody would like to come and take photos, now's your opportunity.
There's a train that comes from Namibia and Malawi. There's a train that comes from Zambia and Zimbabwe. There's a train that...
Does South Africa have a leadership development challenge? As we've seen